Okay, well, Dan covered, you've got the grain sorghum guys and the wheat guys after you. I'll do my best to cover corn. I don't think we have any big soybean producers in the room, so we don't have to infuriate them. No. This is going to be an audible to your flyer. My coworker, Mike Hamilton, had a scheduling conflict today, and we were going to talk about what makes a good loan application. Mike would require about $200,000 of cash per 100,000 you want to borrow. So that tends to work very well in our office. Now, if you want to talk about loans, we can absolutely do that afterwards. But for today, I'm going to talk about risks on the farm and specifically just some very high-level thoughts about marketing your grain, what to think about, why it's so hard, and then a lot of the tools that we have at our disposal for both crops and livestock. And keep in mind, I am going to be painting with a very broad brush. Every operation is really, really different. And what works for one operation may not or will not work for another. Each operation's financial conditions, demands, and all of that is so different that you can't, I've got a few numbers on a chart that I just threw a number up there and ran with it because you could have 30% variation among costs. Who knows? So keep in mind with what I'm saying is it's a very, very broad brush, and knowing your individual numbers and your individual farm's needs is very important. So with that, I am going to try to do a quick presentation, no sleeping, throwing things. If you are comfortable with some hedging terminology and tools, I hope I can bring maybe a different aspect just to get your mind to think. If you're new to hedging, I want to touch lightly on our tools. It's not a science. Hedging, there's no formula that we can create to figure out when, where, and what to do. The emotional side of hedging and your crops or livestock is very difficult, and nobody knows with certainty what the markets will do, despite what they say at the coffee shop the morning after the big report came out. I knew the price was going to go up. Well, you thought it was, but you didn't know. And then the final thought is, if you are doing having a hedging program or thinking about putting one into place, finding a broker that you are comfortable with and is on your level is the number one goal. And it's okay to keep things simple. We don't need call option spreads and all of that. Sometimes just a simple forward contract can be very effective. So with risk in agriculture, the first one we have obviously is cost, and this could go on forever. We have seed, chemical, fertilizer. If you're a livestock producer, your feed, your vet bills, your land costs, your equipment costs, labor costs. If you haven't renewed your insurance policy for your farm liability protection, that's probably another 30% hit again this year. And then, of course, living expenses. And we could go on down the list, and it would go up the other side of the wall if we kept going on cost. We'll stay away from that topic today. The other side that we're really focused on is revenue. We have production risk. We have yield per acre on crops. We have several tools to actually help manage that risk on the farm. Multi-peril crop insurance, hail insurance. We have ECO, SCO, there's ARC, there's PLC. The list kind of goes on and on for that. If we're talking livestock and you're a cow-calf guy, there's not a lot of tools to mitigate your production. If you have 10% opens for some reason, there's not a good insurance policy out there. You're just at risk for your production. If they don't gain well because of weather factors, there's nothing out there that really helps you with that. Mass casualty losses, obviously you have some protection, but nothing like agriculture, or nothing like our crop. We do have, for production, we have a LIP, the Livestock Indemnity Program at FSA, and then typically we rely on disaster or ad hoc payments. Then we have price risk, which we have similar tools for both crops and livestock. Went too fast. We have a futures market. we have contracts, and then we can also buy some insurance for our price risk. And price risk is what we'll talk about. Livestock first. Price protection methods, we have futures and options contracts. Typically, we consider those expensive and large. They're subject to margin calls and not widely used by non-commercial operators. If you're buying a feeder cattle contract or selling a feeder cattle contract, that's 50,000 pounds of beef. If you're only going to sell 20,000, you're overhedged by a factor of greater than 2, and if that position moves against you, the math behind it does not work well for you. LRP is also, I would classify it as expensive, but it is well subsidized, and with the prices to where we're at today, LRP is a very attractive product. The nicest thing about LRP is the ability to customize it to your specific operation. You can sell steers, you can sell heifers, you can sell 5 head, you can sell 200 head, you can sell 2,000. I don't know if there is a limit to an LRP contract, but it is very, very nice, especially for our smaller, or even, I would say, don't want to say small necessarily, but less commercial. If you're foot feed yard, you get to play in this area. But if you've got 50 cows, typically we're down in LRP. Then I did put the video auction up there as a question mark. It's kind of similar, in my view, to forward pricing. Grain contracts, you've set your sell point, you've set who you're selling it to, and you've set your price. You don't get to pick your price like a forward contract. That's still up to the open market bidding on that day. But you do really eliminate a lot of your price risk from the moment you sell them on video till the time you market them later. So maybe September is when they go on video, but you don't ship them till December. So that can save or protect some of your price with video auctions and other services. And I broke it. What'd I do, Helen? It would be. I think I hit. Yeah, technology risk. All right. Yeah, there we go. And another thing to think about with livestock is our price volatility. And I'm painting with the broad brush and I'm dancing carefully on something that could be dangerous, but I would make the case that relative to our grain prices, livestock is very sensitive to both supply side forces and the demand side forces. I mean, in the United States with corn, yes, we are subject to how much we're going to export, what our feed usage is. But at the end of the day, worldwide, global demand for corn is relatively stable, especially compared to livestock. If you were talking beef, years ago we had a BSE scare where tomorrow nobody wants to eat beef. That really, for all practical purposes, we're not going to stop eating corn tomorrow. It's just, maybe we could, but we do not get demand side shocks to the system in livestock or in crops nearly like we do in livestock. And demand function of consumer economic condition, disease, and that can go in, we always talk about beef falling off out of bed because of BSE or the issue with some of the cattle coming from Mexico, but with bird flu, losing some poultry in that segment, we're going to substitute out of some of the poultry into pork and beef maybe, so that can actually help our beef demand. And then the other thing is consumer trends and fads. It can really drive the prices for our livestock. We do have a big push against corn syrup and all that, but that's hard to eliminate compared to just deciding not to eat a steak. And then supply side issues on livestock to think about: disease, drought, and cost of production. That's a pretty short list, but there's a significant amount of supply issues. For crops, the price volatility, like when Dan talked We talked about weather, what the production is going to be in South America, what the production is going to be here, what the production is going to be, what the weather is going to be. We drive our commodity markets based upon the weather. It's supply driven. We're at 10% stocks to use on corn. The real question is, well, we know we're going to have 90 million, maybe 92 million. There could be some variation in acres, but the real question at the end of the day is, if we have 92 million acres, but we beat trend line yields, we'll be buried in corn, and it's a supply side driven deal. We just don't. It's just production. Crop demands, I've kind of talked about this. I consider it stable compared to beef. We did get a demand shock in the corn industry, so we can't ignore the ethanol thing. That was a very big demand shock to the corn industry and the corn market. And there is the possibility with some soybean crush plants coming online that we could get kind of a demand for biodiesel and these soybean crush plants and domestic demand for soybeans. That would be great to have another outlet to use soybeans for. Crop supply, and when we're talking crops, it's global. I mean, yes, it matters what we do in the United States, but at the end of the day, it's a function of worldwide production. Corn, South America is obviously another big player. Not so much. I mean, soybeans is definitely the big one in South America. If you get into wheat, you all know the statistics about wheat grown every day across the globe and harvested every day of the year and all of that. The supply of crops driven by global acres and conflicts. One thing Dan mentioned earlier that I thought was very important is the stability of our economy. And we have lots of government uncertainty in the United States right now, but relative to every other country that grows wheat, corn, and soybeans that we compete with, Russia, Ukraine, South America, we're pretty stable. I mean, we don't have any wars, so our elevators are going to be there tomorrow. We should be thankful for that, because stability is better than instability. So for crop price protection factors to consider, how big is my farm? Am I dry land or irrigated? And I have an asterisk beside that one because I've got a couple matrices coming up to show how my plan might change based upon dry land or irrigated crops. Geographic area, am I relatively close together with all my acres? Am I spread out across the county, multiple counties? We can look at some long-term forecasts. The other one in it is emotions, and this is probably the biggest factor I see people run into when they're making their hedging decisions, is price. Price is the one thing we get to time, and it's set every day. We know what it is all through the day, and we can pick. We can't pick when it rains or how much. We never say, I wish I would have had it rain last week. But we do say, I should or should not have priced my grain last week. We're always judging ourselves on our pricing with hindsight, and we just don't know with any certainty what was going to happen. That's just a point that we all need to be very aware of. So this is a matrix of non-irrigated corn. I said the cost to produce a non-irrigated acre of corn is $400 an acre. I have no idea what everybody's cost of production may or may not be. Now, I'm considering this an all-in cost. If Glenn is giving the presentation, he's got economic cost of production, so he's covering capital replacement, living, and all of that. I'm doing the same thing here, just calling it all in. We need to cover our land costs. We've got payments to make, perhaps on land, maybe on equipment, maybe on a house. We have living. So every operation is going to have a different number. But I used 400 because it was nice and round and it made this work perfectly. So but no, we have been in a drought, depending on where you're at, maybe 3 years in a row. So I've got yield across the top and price along the side. Anything in green beats my $400 an acre. Anything in red is below. And the emphasis of this is on a dry land operation. we are very, very sensitive to our yield. If we're down in drought years at 60 or 70 bushel corn and we need $400 an acre, we're down to $575 cash price for corn. That'd be nice. We don't get a lot of $575 corn to sell year in and year out. It does happen, but it's tough. If we are able to push that yield with some timely rains and good management practices, and we can get to the 100 to the 120 range, all of a sudden, $4 cash price at $100, that's easy math. That's why the banker did it that way. But these are very, very obtainable prices over the last 15, 20 years. $4 corn, if we can beat that, we only need 100 bushel an acre corn. I say only. At $4.50, 90, and down here at $5, 80. But I really want to emphasize that while it's nice to get $5 corn, the ability to outprice a dryland drought is very, very difficult. At the end of the day, we really need to sell some bushels. And it also makes our hedging a lot easier when we know, or we think we know, that our yield is going to be up in here. When we've had 3 drought years in a row, and we're going into another dry year, our willingness to take some prices and lock in that is very, very hard to do, because in the back of my mind, yeah, I'd like to be at 100, but if I'm at 50, if I hedge half of my crop, I've hedged it all at that point. If I'm thinking at 100, that's my yield's going to be 100. If I decide, well, I'll just do a 50% hedge during, say, March, well, then I've hedged it all at 50 bushel an acre. And typically this time of the year, we don't like to be that far out unless we're selling $6 corn. Just that uncertainty of our production makes it very difficult for a non-irrigated farm. This is an irrigated matrix. I put the all-in costs at $850 an acre. Yeah, I think if you look at ag manager budgets, it's about $1,100. I would have a hard time saying that $850. If you've got any kind of payments, you'll get there. But the kind of the story behind the irrigated matrix is exactly the opposite of what our non-irrigated fields production sees. At $3.50, we've got to go all the way to 240 bushel acre. We can certainly grow 240 bushel corn in Thomas County, but it does take quite a few things to go the right way. 220 is a lot easier to grow, and now we're at that $4 mark. But you can see over here, 150, if we're at the $5.75 or $6 mark on our irrigated, we have enough price to just push our way through what we would consider maybe a short crop or a drought year, and especially if you're in the 170 and at $5, you're in good shape. So kind of the thought is if you're looking in a drought year, an irrigated producer can potentially outprice just through sheer volume of dollars per bushel, can reach their revenue needs, where on a dryland operation it becomes pretty difficult. And then the flip side, if we're down at $3 corn, yeah, we can go to 260 and 270 on irrigated corn, but that's pretty tough to do. You just need that $4 price or somewhere in there if your costs are $8.50 an acre. So with that, we have, for crop price protection, we have the producer price is comprised of 2 components: futures price, and that's determined on a daily basis at the CME, almost 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's based on global supply and demand. Yes, theoretically, it's just the United States, but in reality, we're priced at everything's traded in the US dollar. It's global. There are several contract months that it's traded in, and the price is determined by open market bidding with numerous buyers and sellers. So that's kind of an economic definition, but it's highly liquid. There are lots of people every day that are willing to buy and sell a corn or wheat or soybean futures contract. That is very advantageous to us because it allows us to select a price nearly whenever we want. Basis is the opposite of futures. Basis is based on the local supply and demand factors within the market. If you're setting in Garden City, Kansas, or Scott City, Kansas, and there's feedlots all the way around you, you have a very high demand for corn in that area. Or if you go further south down into Texas, it gets even higher. The basis is set by the buyers. So you've got feedlots that are bidding on basis. You have elevators that are bidding on basis, ethanol plants, and perhaps other places. And then obviously our cash price is the futures plus or minus the basis. If we're on corn, we're in plus area right now. So for crop price protection, we can get price protection without using the futures market by forward contracts. At that point, we have all of our price eliminated. We can do a basis contract. That fixes our basis. I know a lot of folks going into the fall of 2024 were selecting a basis contract. We were able to get some 65 cent over March for JFM delivery. And they said, hey, you know, I can get 65 over the contract price. Contract price is at $4 today. I really don't think it's going to go any lower. So I'm going to keep my 65 cents and hope the price goes up some. And if you did that, you are very happy because we got close to $5. You held on and timed everything perfectly. You got close to $5.65 out of it. That does not eliminate your futures risk. Then the other one that is becoming seldom used, I think, is hedge to arrive, which does the exact opposite. We like the futures price, but we don't like the basis. This would be in a time frame where typically we would have a very high future price, but you know, maybe we have a lot of supply in the area and we call a elevator and say, well, you're $1 under on your wheat basis right now, but the board's at $7. I don't want that $7 to go away. You're probably not going to get any worse than $1, so we'll see what happens on that side. Like I said, that has basis risk in it. All three of these methods, they're free, which is great. They're easy, they're simple. You can do them with a phone call. They do lock in your delivery location, which that could be good, that could be bad. Elevators, ethanol plants, and feedlots are the big three that we're doing any of these contracts with out here. For crop price protection with the futures, first, a little terminology. If you're long, you're buying. If you think, I always think from a speculator standpoint, you think the price will go up. If I think the price I always use something different. Let's use NVIDIA stock. If I think NVIDIA is going to continue to go up, I am long the market. I am buying the market. If I'm a hedger, I will be buying grain in the future, and I don't want the price to go up. That's your feedlot. Corn's at $4. I like $4 on the board. I'm going to buy some corn in 6 months. I want to be long that contract, perhaps. Short, sell. Speculator thinks price will go down. Hedger will be selling in the future and does not want the price to go down. That's the farmer side of the equation. We are afraid the price will go down. So for futures contracts, they are traded several different months. I did not put them all in there. There's 5 different months. I'm pretty sure I got this right for corn and wheat, 6 for soybeans and live cattle, and 8 for feeder cattle. There's a specific size for each contract. For contracts for wheat, corn, and beans, 5,000 bushels per contract, 50,000 pounds for feeder cattle, and 40,000 pounds for a live cattle contract. There are many contracts which, off the top of my head, I believe the corn, wheat, and beans are 1,000 bushel contracts. And I think I did see an article that they are doing micro contracts now, maybe at 500 bushel increments on some commodities. The problem with the minis is the liquidity need. There's not a lot of players in that market. If there's most of the big boys are wanting to trade, they're doing 5,000 bushel contracts and doing thousands of them. It doesn't do them any good to trade 1,000 bushels at a time. So those contracts the liquidity gets tough, and you might want to sell your contract, but having somebody out there that's willing to buy it at that's going to be a lot more difficult. If you go into the stock market and there's a trading table over the counter or penny stocks, you can run into this. It's a similar fashion where you have something that not a lot of people want to buy, so it's hard to come to a price agreement. Margins, this is a cost. Realistically, it doesn't cost anything. I think maybe around $1,500 for a corn contract, but remember you're buying 5,000 bushels of the right to or if you're selling, the right to sell. So if it's a $5 contract, you're at 5,000 bushels, that's $25,000 that you only have to put $1,500 down on. They are subject to margin calls. Anybody that has had a margin call on a futures contract knows that this can be very stressful. But this future price does eliminate a futures contract does eliminate all of your future price risk on those bushels. That is the single most, the advantage to a futures contract is you have eliminated the futures price risk on those bushels. So on an example, if we have $5 December corn contract we have a $25,000 worth of value, expires first business day prior to March 15th, you must exit. Yes, theoretically, I think they're still deliverable. Practicality, there's nowhere you can haul your 5,000 bushels of corn that's going to take it for $5. It's just not going to happen. You have to exit the contract on. And with an initial margin of $1,500, typically the terminology there is we sell the board at $5. So our cash price at this point is $5 plus or minus the basis, which is unknown at this time. If the futures price increases to $6, we should be happy because we're selling grain. Unless we're 100% hedged, we're picking up $1 on our unpriced bushels. At that point, the cash price is $6 plus or minus the basis. We have a gain or a loss. The new value is $6 times 5,000 or $30,000 versus the beginning price of $25,000. So we've lost $5,000. Along the way, because we only put $1,500 in this contract and it's worth $5,000 less, we are going to have to margin that back, meaning we're going to have to put some more money in, probably to the tune of about $3,500 for that contract. If the futures price declines to $4, and I'm going to back up, the margin calls and this position is one, the commodity prices have increased. Keep in mind, yes, we are giving money to our margin calls, but we are picking up 100% of that gain in the futures market on the grain that we are going to sell. So it is a wash. It is stressful, though, to keep shipping money to most likely your banker and then to RJ O'Brien and watching the money go out the back while you're still probably haven't produced the crop or waiting to produce the crop. It is very stressful. Margin calls can be significant. The more volatile that the commodity markets are, the bigger the margin calls get. So that can be tough, but it does work. If the futures price declines to $4, same story, cash price plus $4, gain and loss. Our commodity contract is now worth $20,000 versus $25,000. So we picked up $5,000 on those 5,000 bushels, but we did lose the dollar on the cash side somewhere. Option contracts. Options are probably the most commonly used futures tool that we have. They are fantastic, except they don't work like they taught me at K-State. They do work, but just not, they can, there's more factors than what they teach you in school and what we see in a lot of presentations. Same thing, it's 5,000 bushel contracts. It's a subset of the futures contract where it's the technical term for it is it's a derivative market. You can buy or sell the options. I will only focus on the buy side of options. If you're selling options, that's fine. There's some tools out there that are great, but I am not going to dive into why we would want to sell options today. Two types of options. We have a call, that's our long. We have a put, which is short, and I'm going to focus solely on the put, and we're only going to buy it. So that's why our option markets get incredibly complex, because we can also go in and sell a call and have a very similar position to a purchased put. You have a strike price. That's the price that you have the option to sell your commodity at. And there are lots and lots and lots of options. If corn prices range from $3.50 to $6.50 during a trading month, there's probably an option for every 10 cents. So you'd be looking at 30 different options on the call side and 30 different options on the put side. So there's 60 options for each of the 5 contract months. So 150 different options at any given time for commodities, and options get really, really messy really quick, but they do have lots of value for us to use. Option prices are a factor of many things. The strike price, the time to expiration, and then if you go to K-State, we stop right there, and this would actually be called the time value and the intrinsic value. Now, I've got volatility in there too. Option prices will change based upon volatility of the market. You are buying the option, the right to do something in the future. And if price is going all over the board, the value of that or the cost of that is significantly higher than if the commodities are trading in a very, very narrow range and we don't think anything is good. If we don't think anything's going to change in 60 days or 90 days or 120 days, the option prices will come down. But today, I would imagine, I have not looked at an options market, but I imagine they're quite pricey right now. There's 2 other terms: in the money, out of the money. An in the money call, strike prices below the futures. You have the right to buy corn below the current futures price, so you're in the money. You are buying it, that's good. In the money put, strike prices above the futures price. You have the right to sell corn at $5 when today the futures market's trading at $4. Option price is the premium, and premiums do not move one-to-one with the underlying futures. If corn price goes up 10 cents, if you have a put, it will not move by 10 cents that day. It will move by something different. And depending on the day and the driving underlying factors of what caused the movement will determine whether it moves, how much it moves. And option premiums can move inverse to the underlying futures. Meaning if you have a put and the price of corn goes down, making your put more valuable, it is possible for your put to actually go the other direction. That's a lot of it's going back to that volatility, and really that volatility is encompassing a lot of different things. And this is where options get kind of a bad rap, is they don't work like they teach us in the books. Or if you go to, I don't want to pick on any commodity brokers, they'll have a nice chart that shows, it's very linear, and it's like, hey, this is what happens. And in theory, yes, it does, but we don't operate according to theory. So I've got 30 minutes or 30. Okay, price protection. So I'm going to go through a couple examples really quick here. Out of the money hedge. So I'm going to buy a 450 strike put. I'm going to assume that December corn futures are $4.60. So I'm out of the money. I'm buying the right to sell corn at $4.50, when today I can actually go out and sell it for $4.60. The cost, the strike is below the futures price. So the distance between the 10 cents under the 460, there's no value there because I'm below the futures market. There is still value in this option though, because we are buying an option today on February 10th that we don't have to get out of until December. So lots and lots of things could happen. So we're buying a lot of time. And then there's that volatility factor that's hanging out there. When I put these slides together, the actual cost of that option was 32 cents a bushel. And if you take 32 times 5,000, it should come up with something around 1,600. Profit loss at expiration. If the corn price is $4.50, it's above the contract price, the option premium will be 0. I bought the right to sell corn at $4.50. If I can sell it at the day that option expires for $4.50, there's no value in the option. The market gave me what I wanted, so my 32 cents is going to go away. If we are $4.49 at or below the contract, there could be a gain. So I have a 450 option at I have the right to sell at 450. The market is 449 or less. So at minimum, it's worth a penny because I can sell it for a penny more. The time and the volatility at expiration provide 0 value, probably. So I'm talking about the day that option expires, which, Dan, is that 10 days? When does the options expire prior to the contract? Is that correct?
I think it's like
5.
Say produced corn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the options expire in front of the futures contract, so there's time to settle all of those options. So, but if you wait till the very last day to settle, the time and the volatility factor is going to be at or near 0. It's just simply the difference between your strike price and the board price at that time. Then if I do the math on this purchase where I spent 32 cents to get a hold of this option and I sell it on expiration, anything below 418, so would put my option in what would be a profitable hedge. It's my strike price of 450 less my premium of 37 cents. And if looks like 37 and 32 are pretty close to the same, but so 418 would be your break-even price. If the contract finishes between 418 and 450, my hedge didn't save me a whole lot of money, but it still puts a floor in. If we do above 450, the premium is based on time and volatility, just like a purchase. Let me see. Oh, selling or exiting my position prior to expiration. So 450 and above contract price, the premium is based on time and volatility, just like a purchase. There's likely less than premium. Okay, let me back up here. I can't remember what I was thinking. If we're getting out of our position over here 30 days prior to expiration, and the corn price is $4.50 and above, we're still out of the money, but we still don't know. We have 30 days left on our option. We don't know what prices are going to do in that time frame. So it could be if we're betting on really volatile markets, there could be a lot of premium. There's no value in the 450 put from a intrinsic standpoint because we're still at the same as the strike price. But we still have that unknown factor of the next 30 days. The premium at that point will probably be less than what we paid for it, but it may not be. 449 and below contract price, it's just a continuation of this, but we get to pick up any of the gains in the contract price versus our strike price. So at 449, we got a penny worth of value plus whatever our time and volatility is going to be. I was going to put in a calculation, but who knows what that option is going to be worth 30 days prior to expiration. If all of a sudden China's decided to buy a bunch of corn from us, it could be wild. If the market's boring, the premium could be very little. And then I have one more example. It's just the opposite of an in-the-money hedge. So not a lot of, we don't do this a lot of times because the premiums are so expensive. But we could buy, if the corn price is 460, we could buy a 470 put today. So we're going to get 10 cents plus time plus volatility. On that day, it was 43 cents a bushel. Profit at expiration, I'm going to go through these quick. Same math as before. If the commodity price is 470 and above, our option premium is going to be 0. We'll give it away. If it's 469 and below on the contract price, we will have some sort of a gain, most likely. The break-even price on this trade, if we are at 460 when we buy the 470, spent 43 cents. So if I take the 460, subtract the 43 cents, we need 457. Or no, excuse me, 427 is our break-even price. Same thing if we do it prior to expiration. 470 and above, we're still subject to the time and volatility that's left on the contract. If the prices have come below, we are picking up any of that gain in the price as well as the time and the volatility. But the one thing I wanted to talk about was the premiums. The premiums are very fickle. The day I picked these, the 460 corn contract, a 450 put, so we're 10 cents out of the money on that cost. That was 32 cents. 470 put, which 10 cents in the money, 43. So we're 20 cents difference on our two strike prices, but 11 cents different on our premiums. And so if you go according to theory, those should be 20 cents different. They have the same expiration date, and the distance to the strike price is set at 20, or the distance between the two strike prices is 20 cents. So this is just, in my mind, an example that they don't work according to the theory. There's lots and lots of factors. Brokers that trade each day have a better feel for what the strike price is worth. If the strike price is worth the premium, they don't behave. Costs are fixed at purchase. That's the advantage to an options contract is you buy it, you're done. You can call anybody, your banker, whoever, and I'm done spending money on my hedge. Now I just hope it behaves. And that's quick. Final thoughts on it is I say keep it simple, silly. Nobody's stupid, but it really does. In my experience, the options are the ones that are most heavily used, but they can get very, very complex, and you can get a broker that will get you into some positions that maybe don't work the way you were hoping or intended. And the absolute worst possible thing is to get out of any hedge prior to actually moving your grain. So that's where keeping it simple is important. That way you understand what's going on and have faith in it. I stole this from Ag West. Have a plan. Most importantly, execute the plan. Stay consistent with your hedging. You time the positions with cash or like cash sales. That's another big thing is regardless of what futures product you're using, if you are doing a cash sale, you need to exit the hedge on that. If you sell all of your grain and leave your hedge on for a few more days, you're speculating. And that can go terribly wrong. Another option here is if you do have one of those options positions purchased and you decide to forward contract those bushels, you will need to exit the option position at that time because you've set your price at that point. Yes, you can buy a call if you're afraid to sell grain. And that is all I have for that. That is my contact information if anybody has anything. But overall, hedging is it's emotional. And as I stumbled through the option stuff, those are the most commonly used ones, and there's a lot going on, and you can't really just say this is what's going to happen when this happens. That is all I have. Any questions? Yes.
You know, you when you're trying to apply these things. So, right at like a corn, it's like 470 good. Just